Today we're looking at ratios and proportions. Basically, ratios are fractions, and the fractions have, if they equal each other, are proportions. So if we have a fraction that's equal to another fraction, it's a proportion. The other ways of writing a ratio is we write the word 2, or we write it with the dot. So we can have 2 to 3 as a ratio, or we could have 2 dot dot 3, or we could have it as 2/3. So those are three ways of writing a ratio. Now we can determine whether a ratio is equal is if we cross multiply them. So if I have 2 over 3 and I want to know if it's equal to 16 over 24, I cross multiply diagonally and see if those equal each other. So 2 times 24 is 48, and 3 times 16 is also 48. And if they equal each other, then they are, yes, equivalent ratios, equal ratios. If not, then obviously they wouldn't be equal ratios. So let's do and determine this problem. So if I take 2 over 3, and it doesn't matter if what we have, we want to know if they're equal. So I'm going to take 2 times 14, which is 28, and I want to know, is that equal to 8 times 3.5? Well, that's equaling to 27, I believe, and they're not equal, so it's not a ratio, equivalent ratios. So we can go through and do the same thing for each of these. If I cross multiply, 1.8 times 1 is 1.8, and 0.2 times 0.9 is 0.18. They're not equal, so it's not equivalent. So those two are not equivalent. So now let's take 36 times 35, 36 times 35, and we get 1,260. And then I take 15 times 42, and I get 630. So they're also not equal, not equivalent. Now we can use the same philosophy to solve proportions. That means, what if we don't know what one of the variables are, one of the ratios? We can find out what it will make it equal. So if I cross multiply 10 times 3 and then divide by the other number, I would get 30 divided by 5, and whatever that is equals x, which happens to equal 6. So the answer is 6. So if I do the same thing, 8 times 25 is 200, and I'm going to divide that by the other number, that equals r. And that happens to equal 5. So we get 5. Now, they become a little bit more complicated when we have an expression, but we're still going to do cross multiplying. So 7 times x minus 2. So it's 7 times x minus 2 equals 14 times 2, which I know that one, that's 28. So this we have to distribute. So we get 7x minus 14 equals 28. And from there, we have to solve. So this is a two-step equation solving. So I'm going to add 14 to both sides, add 14 to both sides. And so I'm going to get 7x equals 42, divide by 7, x equals 6. The same thing for this one. We're going to cross multiply. So 8 times x plus 4. So I'm going to show, so I can do the distributive property, and then 5 times 3, which is 15. So then I distribute, I get 8x plus 32 equals 15. So now I subtract 32 from both sides. And so I get 8x equals 15 minus 32 is a negative 17. Divide by 8. Divide by 8. So x equals a negative 17/8. And you don't need to divide the fraction out in this problem, and there's our answer. Now oftentimes we can do what's called scales. So if we know what the scale is, like what is one thing equal to the next, we can create a proportion. And so our first proportion is what's given to us. So 3 inches equals 10 miles. So now I'm given 1 1/8 inches. So the inches part has to be together, so I'm going to put the 1 1/8 inches. And so we want to know how many miles. So this is the N, or the question mark, because we want to know the actual length. So we want to know miles. So now we can cross multiply. So I'm going to cross multiply those. So this times 10 is 11.25 equals N, and we have to divide by the 3 to give us 3.75 equals N. So the answer is it's 3.75 miles.